Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how I put laminate wood flooring in my foyer and in the hallway of my house. You can't see the floor in this photo, but you can see the color scheme that I did have going on with the dark trim around the walls and at the windowsills. My husband bought this house about 3 years ago, and they did notice that there was stick-on tile in the foyer. We always assumed that the stick-on tile was on the subfloor, but we later found out that it was actually over stone tile. My husband and my brother ripped up the stone tile that was laid down. I did not show this in this video though, because I have discussed how to rip up tile in previous videos. After we ripped up the tile, we discovered that there was a lot of dried mortar stuck to the subfloor. We discovered that we needed to rip this up in order to make sure that the wood we were going to lay down was going to lay flat. We took a putty knife and hit it on the back with a hammer and chipped away at it. This took a lot of time and it made our forearms pretty dang sore, but it was worth it because, like I said, it made the finished product so much better. One of the first things you're going to need to do when laying laminate wood flooring is cut spacers. You can buy these at the store, as in Home Depot or Lowe's, that are pre-cut, but we decided to cut them ourselves to save some money. The only requirement is that they have to be 1/4 inch in thickness, but they do not have to be in straight lines or necessarily the most perfect cut of your life. We used a miter saw to do this, and as you can tell, we did a lot of trial and error learning as well. The reason that these spacers are so important is because wood is porous and therefore it changes size with the temperature that goes on from day to day. You need to make sure that your wood has room to expand and room to shrink in your halls, that way the floor does not buckle and your walls do not crack. Make sure that whenever you use any type of saw that cuts wood, you wear eye protection and ear protection. However, gloves are not necessary because they actually increase your chances of getting a glove finger caught in the saw and it ripping off skin from your hand. Make sure that you are very careful, very slow, and very precise. After cutting my spacers and putting them along the hallway and the foyer along the baseboards, I began to lay out some pieces to get an idea of what I would need to cut. I noticed that my foyer was not long enough for 2 pieces, but also too short for 1. I knew that I would have to cut some pieces, and I also knew that I was going to have to cut off the trim of the wood that was originally laid down, so that way I could fit 2 pieces next to each other. In this video, you will see me using a table saw to cut off the trim, or what I like to call the lip of the piece of wood that I'm going to be laying that cut piece of wood next to. This step is very important because it allows a flush fit between 2 pieces and does not create any uneven spaces or bumps. Lastly, as you are nearing the end of the piece of wood, make sure that you push it all the way through the blade to make sure that you are getting all of the pieces and that you are not leaving any chips or inconsistencies behind. After making precise measurements in the foyer of the spaces that needed to be filled with wood, I began cutting the laminate flooring using a table saw. A table saw is a great tool to use because it has a ruler and measurements so you can see exactly where you need to place your wood. I moved the guide bar over and slid the wood right up against it so nothing would slip, and I would make sure to cut on the lines that I needed to cut on. As stated before, make sure that you have eye and ear protection when using these kinds of tools, but if at all possible, try to avoid using gloves as it actually increases your risk for injury. Lastly, by placing a hand on either side of the cut, you are making sure that you have weight and an even distribution, that way your line comes out clean and straight. With the majority of the pieces cut, I was finally able to start laying down some pieces in a form that I knew that they would stay forever. When you lay down laminate flooring, it is very important to lift the edge and slide it underneath it, and then almost pop it down. You can see that I apply pressure to make sure that even weight is distributed to the crease and that it fully snaps in and it fully seals. To give yourself some extra security and to give the wood a little bit more tension, hit it with a mallet lightly to make sure that everything is laying properly. Finally, the foyer was done. I was so happy with the way that it turned out, and I thought that the space looked brighter and so much nicer. As we move to the hallway, I would like to point out that this area of my house already had laminate flooring. The previous owners put it in, however, they did not cut the wood properly, and a lot of times when we would walk down the hallway, we could feel the wood shift underneath our feet, and it would actually create gaps in between the boards. As you can also tell, there is a piece of tarp underneath the wood that creates a barrier between moisture and allows the wood a safe protection against moisture and water. The wood that we bought to replace this in the hallway already had this kind of adhesive underneath it, so we didn't have to lay that down. The wood that we bought was also more expensive than the wood that was probably already laid down, but it was worth it though because it saved us time and money in the long run. I'm going to start this segment off by showing what not to do. I made the mistake of lining them up and I thought that I was doing really well, so I even took this progression video. However, my brother pointed out that we shouldn't line them up because it doesn't allow them to stay in one place. You should stagger them, and when you stagger them, it is very helpful to label them with tape and Sharpie. The labeling helps a lot because eventually you are going to have to take it back up and rip it up over and over and over again so you can make sure that everything is laying properly and connected, but that way you know what piece goes where. And as you can see, some of the pieces weren't cut yet when I made this video, but I just laid them on top of each other so I could get an idea of where they would go, and I could continue labeling and continue working in this area. So like I said, the boards connect to each other. However, our house is not even. A lot of houses are not even, and a lot of house walls are not straight. So we decided that we were going to get a liquid nails adhesive and we were going to place it underneath the board and then slide the boards together. This worked extremely well to help keep the boards together. However, I do want to warn you that you only have about a 3-minute window if something is crooked to lift it up and lay it back down. As you can tell, you also have to lift up the board right next to it after you lay it down to help snap it into place. I chose to wear gloves because sometimes the liquid nails would fall out a little bit and I would want to pick it up and clean up my mess as I went, but the gloves aren't necessary. Lastly, you can take a mallet and smack it once more to make sure that it lays flat and the adhesive is really bonding to the floor. I do also want to give another warning that if you ever decide to rip up the wood, that the adhesive will definitely leave a mark and definitely leave a stain. So hopefully we keep this wood for a long time and the people who move in after us don't decide to rip it up. From here on out, it starts to get pretty repetitive. I started to put down the wood, I started to put down the glue, and then I did it over and over and over again. I think the thing that helped me the most though, and helped me move along quickly, was my labeling. I can't stress this enough, the labeling is actually extremely important, and it really will help you out. As I was doing all of this gluing and all of this laying, my brother was doing an amazing job cutting the pieces to fit around the door frames. I didn't take any videos of me measuring that, but I would love to hear if you guys would love any ideas and any tips on how to get a perfect measure and a perfect cut so you guys can save time, save materials, and save space. Finally, here's a video of the finished product. My brother and I took some corner rounds and placed them along the baseboards to give it a more complete and sleek look. I think it looks really good, and we also put in some transition pieces in between the bedrooms and where the wood touched. We also used some bricks and some heavy materials like textbooks to hold anything in place that we thought needed a little bit more grip and needed just a little bit more extra help.